Some of you are enjoying that music more than others. Now we'll dismiss the kids to go to Kids Corner. I'm so glad you're here. Gloomy day. We need the rain, though. But it's a good day. Glad to see everyone. This is a shift day. It's hard to believe we're September 11th. We're now kind of into the fall kind of feel. And summer went by quick. Every year, it seems summer goes by quicker and quicker and quicker. Which, and I know this makes me unpopular, which is fine with me. I'm now in my favorite season. The only problem is some years it doesn't last long enough. And it is too short. So anyway, the other thing we're doing is we're starting a brand new series on the book of Hebrews. This is where I really enjoy and get comfortable, where we can get into a book, especially one like Hebrews. If you looked at a number of commentaries for Hebrews, you will get a lot of different stories on what's going on. It is not uniform at all. So if you forced me to pin me down to one, here's where I would fall. I think Hebrews was written in the early 70s. There were a group of Jewish, probably from a priestly family. There were people who were in training to be Jewish priests. They became Christians. Now they were going to be in the ministry as Christians. In the middle of this, they watched as Rome came in and completely wiped out Jerusalem. We remember, even though we're not New Yorkers, 21 years ago, seeing Twin Towers fall, that probably had a visceral impact on you, even though you're not from New York. It just was always there, and it kind of shook people, rightly so. Imagine you were Jewish, and you just watched the temple get destroyed. You watched Jerusalem get destroyed, and this shakes them to their core. And they say, why even continue? It's better if I just give everything up. And so to these Jewish future leaders, this letter's written. We do not know who wrote it. If you forced me to guess, I would tell you Apollos did. If you read 1 Corinthians, Paul writes about this guy named Apollos who's eloquent and is so much more eloquent and better with words than he is. And if you read Hebrews, of all the New Testament letters, Hebrews is probably the most polished, best written of all the New Testament texts. If you wanted to say it's someone else, I don't have anything invested in it. That's just my guess. I'm reading now the book of Hebrews, chapter 2. And it says, well, I'm going to read it out of this because I'm getting older. My eyesight's a little not as good as it used to be. Hebrews 2, 5 through 11. It is not to angels that he has subjected the world to come, about which we are speaking, but there is a place where someone has testified, what is man that you are mindful of him? The Son of Man that you care for him. You made him a little lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor and put everything under his feet. And putting everything under him, God left nothing that is not subject to him. Yet at present we do not see everything subject to him, but we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. In bringing many sons to glory, it was fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, should make the author of their salvation perfect through suffering. Both the one who makes men holy and those who are made holy are of the same family. So Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers. There's a couple layers here. This one says brothers and sisters. I should have read that. I was looking down at my page. The good news this morning is you are not accidental. You were intentionally made. Even those who might say, no, I know my story. I was accidental. No one was planning for me. That's my story, by the way. That's what I mean. Everyone, you are made with purpose. God had you in mind. We are not just these cosmic accidents, some leftover debris from an explosion. Creation is intentional. Creation was made for us. This phrase here, there's a couple things here. It says, you put everything under his, talking mankind, feet. And putting everything under him, God left nothing that is not subject to him. Let me explain this phrase. That is Paul's way, a Jewish way of saying, everything you see was created for us. Think of the just beauty. Think of the order that exists. I have a picture up here. It's one of my favorite pictures. This is at Glacier National Park. And this is on the hike up to Upper Two Medicine Lake. From where we were, that is about, if my memory right, it's about a 6.5 mile hike up to Upper Two Medicine Lake. The last 3/4 of a mile up to the lake is past the sign that says, you are now entering active grizzly bear habitat. And we walked it with a backpack with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, applesauce, and some granola bars. And when we sat down on a log, if just over this rise, this side of a ridge that's just ablaze with color, this would have been taken like this week 5 years ago, or 6 years ago. There's a lake that at the base of that triangular peak you see in the background, that's Upper Two Medicine Lake. Little past this, we had to make a detour up through the red and yellow stuff because there was a bighorn sheep that was not willing to give up the trail. Even when I stopped. And when I stopped, he went forward and moved his head like this, and I thought, okay, you win. It was a day that was just stunningly beautiful. And getting up there, we came around a curve, and I can't even describe it, but there is this huge valley. I mean, vertical walls of 1,000+ feet with so many waterfalls you can't count. And we turned that corner, and my wife she was speechless, overcome. She had tears because the beauty was so intense, there was just no way to process it. There is all kind of examples that we have in our world. This beauty, this harmony, this justice is reflective of a creator. We do not live in a world it could have just been shades of gray, and we meander through life in this blandness. We have this breathtaking beauty. The pounding of the surf, the beauty of a sunset, majestic mountain views, red apples in the fall. I'm figuring probably this week or next week, the most glorious words ever spoken in the English language we'll start seeing again, which is, the honey crisps are in. This beauty shows the mind of God. When you get into the story of the creation, the Garden of Eden story, there's a beauty there. The man was made for the woman, and the woman was made for the man. And they were called helpmates. They're uniquely created. And we need to be created for one another, to help, to support, to love, to live in a relationship in spite of obvious differences. Our culture seems bent right now on teaching us another lesson. If you listen really closely, we don't need anyone. I'm good. I don't need a man. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, is a mantra that's out there. I don't need to box myself in with some woman. I'm better free by myself. I just saw 2 weeks ago, one study just came in, and the study was fully 50% of adult men in our culture report that they live a loveless existence. This week, by the year 2030, present trends continue. That's just 7 years from now. 45% of all adult women will be single and childless. And when you're 28 and when you're 38 and you're in the middle of career and you're in the middle of this, oh, that's not so bad. I don't need some weight dragging me down. I have these goals. Sometimes life looks different down the line. I want to be careful here. One can be a perfect example of being in God's will and having no marriage and being single. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say, we live in a culture that is really, really isolated right now. We are isolated from each other. We don't have systems of support, and that is not the way it was intended. There's one other thing. Ryan covered it in the summer, that this verse tells us very plainly. And I know you've been to 5 funerals where the guy or whoever's doing the funeral oration has said something differently, and it makes me tense every time I hear it. You are not angels. You will not become angels when you die. The little neighbor kid, he won't become an angel either, or she won't become an angel. Angels scripturally are God's kind of messengers that serve humanity. That's why this text says, for a little while, you made humanity a little lower than the angels. Looking forward to the day when eternal life and our status changes. We were not created to lord over someone else. We were not created to be abused by other people. We're created, as this original picture in the garden is, to walk side by side with each other. And in this great phrase, and they walked with God in the garden in the cool of the day. This relationship. The world that we live in was meant to radiate justice. The world we live in was meant to radiate beauty and harmony. The world that we live in was meant to just radiate relationship. And you, that's not my world. I get it. But to be fair, if you look closely, we still see little vestiges and glimpses. The world still radiates beauty, even though it's marred. It still radiates justice from time to time, even though we find very little of it. I think we find in the mind of the Creator the fact that right after mama, or actually dada usually first, and mama second, the third word most kids learn is not fair. Whether they grow up on a ghetto or in a mansion. Every 2-year-old in every Dairy Queen is eyeing everybody else's ice cream cone and wondering why I got shortchanged. This world of beauty and justice and harmony was meant for us and still can be. All through the creative order, every animal coming down, everything that was done. And there's a pause, and at the end, and we were created in God's image. That's a unique status. And I think we all must admit that everything is somehow ruined. And at present, we don't see it. And one of the reasons is because, to be honest, we're the ones that ruined it. You go, I don't ruin it. Well, we still ruin it. We choose selfishness over cooperation. We choose greed over generosity. We choose anger over grace. We choose alienation over relationship. We all do it. We all fight it. Greed and lust and anger tempt us always to use somebody else. I don't abuse anybody, but you might use somebody else for your benefit. And that started right away. The serpent in the garden went to Eve and basically said, did God really say that? Can you really trust God? And by the way, that was an attack on her relationship with Adam. Because Adam heard that directly from God. Adam shared it with Eve. The serpent went to Eve and said, wait a minute, are you sure about that? Are you sure that Adam was telling you the whole story? I bet he's doing that thing where he's only half telling you the thing that happened. Are you sure that God really told you that? Because you could eat the fruit, and I'm telling you, your eyes will be opened. The heart of the temptation was to erode the relationship, not only between God and Adam and Eve, but with each other. Even if you've been married for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, you're always learning ways to better serve and better anticipate and get along with the other. You recognize the danger. In our house, this is one of the things that just developed over time, is that if I'm home and my wife has been to the store, when I see her pull into the driveway, I run outside to empty the car of stuff, and that's not so I can report that I'm an angel or anything. I'm probably angling for permission to golf next week or something like that. I mean, let's be honest. But it's just one of the things. But yesterday, she had come from the store, and it just made me chuckle. She got out of the car, and the first thing she did, because she's not the tallest person, is she got up her tiptoes and looked inside. Like, are you coming? And we learn through the years. But we live in a society that says, how sad that my freedom is so impinged that I feel like I have to run outside when she gets home. That she's expressing weakness because she can't handle a couple bags herself, as if that's the issue. And we're bombarded with these temptations. You, your own boss. You do your own thing. You're the one in charge. You don't need anybody or anything. We think from sometimes our language that Satan is tempting us to follow him. And that is never the goal. Satan doesn't have to do that. All he has to do is get us to serve ourselves first. No, you're on the top. You do what's best for you. Don't worry about these other people. They're just impinging upon your freedom. You are your own God. You call your own shots. You are your own boss. And the result is inevitably a world spoiled. And a relationship spoiled. Beauty is diminished. I don't know about you. Have you ever gone home like to a 30th or a 40th high school reunion or something like that, a college reunion, and you go back and there's people, and I'm not talking about externally. You can just tell that they have been hurt by life. It seems like they're walking around with everything sapped from them. I think that's what happens sometimes. Our own selfishness and greed, and we end up isolated and inward and just drained. Beauty's diminished, justice is overthrown. We have upset the intended order. The good news is it's not totally gone. There are glimpses that remain if we'll just look for them. Signposts that hazily still point the way. Paul said it somewhat different in Corinthians when he says, as if looking through a glass darkly. It's there, but it's unclear. It's fuzzy. And the thing that makes it fuzzy, the thing that gets in the way of a clear view is ourselves. And selfishness and greed and all the things that we allow to get in the way. The good news is Jesus is making all things right. We wonder why injustice exists. If there is a God, then why? That is the question. The very first book in the Bible chronologically to be written is probably the book of Job. And Job is all about why does God let bad things happen to good people? If God forced correct outcomes, if God forced correct behavior, As correct as it might appear, we do not live in a just world, because for there to be beauty, for there to be justice, for there to be relationship, for there to be love, there has to be freedom. That's why Jesus willfully took on our sin and our penalty. He took and exhausted all the injustice and ugliness of the world and let that kill him. And then he rose again to start some things new. He offers us new life. He restores beauty and justice and asks us to join. He does not force us. He invites us. Calls us to be connected not only with him, but be connected to each other. And to try to live in a way that advances justice and beauty and all of these things. This text in Hebrews, verse 9, but we see Jesus who was made a little lower than the angels, which is the exact same phrase used about us. God became one of us for a time. For a time. The result is restoration. Full restoration. We still live in the world described by verse 8. At present, we do not see everything subject to him. Yeah. Because we still live in a world where death and sin and selfishness and greed still rule, unfortunately. But we also have the opportunity to see beauty and justice restored. When a marriage goes 50 years, and the kids get together and throw a 50th wedding anniversary party for the couple. And the older couple walk in, and maybe they're holding hands, and they go up to the cake, and they look at each other and kiss in front of the crowd after 50 years. Everybody claps. Everybody smiles. If you look around, there's usually tears, and it's normally the kids first. They're kids that have the tears. And there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is in a very real way, the world is seeing a beauty that we don't see much of. And I know that you can go in all the magazines in the line at the supermarket with the latest model. This is what beauty is supposed to look like. And I think we all have just enough left. We really kind of know what beauty is. And it's not the photoshopped image, it's the 50 years of faithfulness. When we stand with those culture has forgotten, when we stand beside someone and say, we can do better. Let me offer you something else. We're actually showing the world a little bit of justice. When we live with each other and for each other in spite of differences. We can disagree about things and still love each other. Believe it or not. And don't go on a hunt for them to damage them after church. Even while we sit here today in this church, among you, there are actual Packer fans here. And we can still love each other. I'm going to have to love the Packer fans. It's not like the Bears have any hope in the near future of winning a game. That's not my wish. I'm just describing the reality of the situation. I hope I'm wrong. We're modeling peace. Because the world's picture, there's words that we hear a lot of out there. We hear like inclusion quite a bit. That's one of the new words. I never heard it growing up. Now it's a new word everywhere, inclusion. And the world's picture of inclusion is horrific. The world's picture of inclusion is be sure in your big room that there's a table for this group over here and a table for that group over there and a table for that group over there and a table for that group over there, and go over there and recognize that group for their group identity, and we're all around our little encamped tables. That's not inclusion. The biblical picture of inclusion is one big table that we all sit around. And the identity is not in an ethnicity or an income level or a job title or a skin color, but everybody's inclusion is based on the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And we are part of a larger family. If someone over here is black and someone over here is Hispanic and someone over here is white, and someone over here is Indian and someone over here is Native American and someone wherever you're from, and God is all our Father, then we're all part of the same family. And no one has any status greater than anybody else. That's inclusion. And it is the opposite message that we get in our dominant culture. This restoration that God is doing is a restoring of that full relationship where we walked with God in the cool of the day. And we live in a world that wants to make any restoration part of some group identity. Here's the truth. The truth of the matter is, God's restoration always starts deep inside of me. If it doesn't start deep inside of me, then we're just chasing dreams that will never come to fruition. A restoration that restores relationships with others, restores a relationship with God. We begin to see beauty, we begin to see things. It's a different kind of picture. Just a couple weeks ago, we were at our Adam and Dottie's house, and my wife was sitting on the couch, and with Mabel reading a story, and then Finley saw Mabel getting the story read, and he determined he had to be part of that picture. So he climbed up on the other side of my wife's lap, and she had Mabel here and Finley here and somehow balancing a book, and she was reading it, and I took a picture of all three of them because the picture was beautiful. There's one last thing. Sometimes we walk around feeling like we're disconnected from other people. Here's what the author of Hebrews says at the end of our passage. Both the one who makes men holy, Jesus, and those who are made holy, you and me, are of the same family. So Jesus is not ashamed to call you brothers and sisters. We have sometimes the picture of me and Jesus. This picture is not that way. We're part of the same family. A new identity. We live in a world that falls awfully short of what it was meant to be. And it's our fault. Hebrews admits the world is broken. And the reason why we need directions is because we live in a broken world. A few years ago, my wife and I were up in New England for the first time, and we were driving through Boston. We quickly found out that Boston is broken. Especially if you're driving a car. And because Boston is broken, everybody needs directions. They might start with like putting dotted lines to signify lanes and street signs to let you know what street you're on, but I don't know. What do I know? And we live in a world that's broken, and so often we need directions. Early in this chapter, we're pointed in one direction, the first point of the remedy. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death. And the one who made men holy and the one who are made holy are of the same family. Jesus is not ashamed to call us brothers and sisters. We don't find the remedy in political power. Everybody looks. You will not find the remedy in moral performance. And I'm all for good morals. You will find it in the God who took the worst and has started the restoration. N.T. Wright wrote this: the new creation is the renewal of creation the way it was meant to be. It's not scrapping the present world and the launching of something different. But it's the renewal of the creation the way it was meant to be. God has something better for you than even we could think about in our best day. We're going to close by taking communion. If I could, I'd like, Kurt, would you come up? And Ryan, would you come up? And we're going to do it like